All right, so I just looked on YouTube and the first couple of chapters aren't on there, so I'm going to reread them for you guys so you can you can have a chance to hear them again. I don't really know what happened. This is called Argo Manor. The house appeared suddenly from around the bend. Its stone tower rose up like finger pointing at the sky. It was framed by the blue-gray sea. Wow, gasped Mrs. Covenant. Behind the wheel, her husband simply smiled. He steered the car through a forbidding iron gate, opened specifically for their arrival, he guessed, and parked the car in the courtyard. Mrs. Covenant got out, the white gravel crunching beneath her feet. She blinked and stared, touching her fingers to her lips, as if she's not sure she could quite believe her eyes. The house was perched high upon a cliff overlooking the sea. The waves crashed against the rocks far below. The air had a sharp, salty taste, and the house was enclosed by the blue of the sea and the sky as if it were about to be swallowed up by nature itself. Tidy rows of trees stood on each side, punctuated by flowers of every color. From the edge of the cliff, a visitor could barely glimpse a small, sandy beach below. Farther out was the bay of Kilmore Cove. A town had gathered around it, its houses huddled close to the sea. Every house and every person in the entire town, it all centered around the sea. As she stood in the courtyard, her eyes blinking with amazement, Mrs. Covenant was joined by an old man, his face covered with deep wrinkles and a trim white beard. The man's gaze was intense and searching. "My name is Nestor," he said. "I'm the caretaker here at Argo Manor." So that's the name, Argo Manor. How strange, Mrs. Covenant thought. Meanwhile, the caretaker had started limping in the direction of the house. He led the couple to an ornate porch that offered a breathtaking view of the sea. "Are you sure we're not mistaken?" Mrs. Covenant asked in disbelief. She brushed her hand along the walls of Argo Manor as if to assure herself that it was real and this wasn't all some fantastic dream. Her husband took her hand. His wife's reaction to this place delighted him. She had already overwhelmed and hadn't even stepped inside yet. "Now get ready for this," he whispered. The inside of Argo Manor was even more spectacular than the outside. Nestor swept them off on a hurried tour of the house, darting in and out of rooms, opening doors, pulling back curtains, and then quickly ushering the Covenants along to the next room. The house was old, but it had character. Character, as if it were a living thing instead of a mere house of stone and wood. The furniture was a crazy jumble of styles, seemingly from every corner of the globe. An Egyptian vase, a Venetian desk, Persian rugs, a painting from the Hudson River School. Yet somehow it all worked. Everything had its place. "Tell me this is all true," Mrs. Covenant murmured. "This is all ours. Tell me I'm not dreaming." "It's true, my dear. Welcome to your new home." The caretaker showed them into an elegant sitting room that had an ancient ceiling with exposed beams. The walls were stone. Leading into it was another small archway, and across the room there was another door, and a door of dark wood set into the far wall. "This is one of the oldest rooms," Nestor said, and he smiled with satisfaction. "The former owner, Mr. Ulysses Moore, was very strict about certain details, and he insisted that these rooms stay true to their original function. True, time changes all, and there was once a medieval tower here that was destroyed by a storm. The only change that Mr. Moore allowed to this room was to seal off the drafty windows and, naturally, to have electrical wiring installed. Though I confess," Mr. Nestor said, "we still have some problems with drafty rooms." "Jason will love it here." His wife remained silent. Her thoughts were on her daughter, Julia. "There are 2 kids, isn't that right?" the caretaker inquired. "Yes, a boy and a girl, both 11 years old." "Twins." Nestor's eyes twinkled. "And I imagine they're bright and full of life, and how happy they will be here," he said. "Don't worry about them. The house may be isolated from others, but it contains a world of excitement for adventuresome young ones." "Oh, they're adventuresome, all right," Mrs. Covenant said. She was not worried about Jason. He was a dreamer, and she knew that he'd instantly feel the magic of this place. But Julia, she was different. She was a city girl who enjoyed the buzz and bounce of urban living, the noises and the mad rush, the whirlwind of faces and culture. "They'll be fine," he said. "Even Julia. It will be good for them both." Mrs. Covenant nodded. "The twins will be thrilled." Perfect, purred Nestor, stroking his beard. Just perfect. So it's a deal then. He thrust out his hand to Mr. Covenant. The wife explained to his husband that the former owner, Ulysses Moore, was an eccentric, an old man with peculiar ideas, and he wished for the house to be leased only to a young family with at least 2 kids. Nestor nodded in agreement. He wanted the house to be full of life. Old Mr. Moore believed that a house without young voices was like a man who had long since gone away. He led the couple back outside, and a moment before she walked out, something made Mrs. Covenant pause under the archway. She turned to look again at the door in the eastern wall. It looked like it had been burned in some places, as if it had survived a fire. In other places it was scarred by scrapes and deep gashes, as if somebody might have taken an axe to it at one time when they were angry. "What happened to that door?" she asked, and Nestor stopped and glanced from the door to Mrs. Covenant, and he shook his head. "Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Moore's orders. That door should have been replaced long ago. Just pretend it isn't there." He walked to the door, crossed his arms, and eyed it like an old adversary. "It's been through everything, this old door. Long ago, the keys to open it were, misplaced. You see these 4 holes? Mr. Moore believed they were locks. He tried to open it in every imaginable way, but it was no use. This door is sealed forever." "And where did it lead?" wondered Mr. Covenant. The caretaker shrugged. "Who knows? It's a mystery to me. This old house is full of secrets. Once this door might have provided a shortcut to the old water tank, but that no longer exists." He glanced at the door. "It's a door without a purpose," he says. Mrs. Covenant ran her hand gently down the black and scratched wood and felt a pang. "Maybe we should put something in front of it," she said, turning to her husband. "I wouldn't want the kids to try and reopen it." "Excellent idea," Nestor quickly agreed, limping out of the room. "That's the best thing to do. The kids should never get it in their mind to try and open it." Chapter 2. Jason Covenant stood perfectly still at the bottom of the stairs, listening intently. There was a draft, a breeze carrying distant noises, the creaking of the furniture, the murmuring of the wind, the scampering of small feet. In recent days, Jason had imagined that the furniture at Argo Manor had a life of its own. As soon as you left the room, it moved a millimeter, just a millimeter and no more, so that it couldn't be caught doing such a thing. Was that possible? But this time it was different. It couldn't have been a piece of furniture that had moved, nor the seagulls perched on the tiled roof, or the lizards in the ivy, or the mice in the attics. No. This time he'd heard a distant sound, hurried footsteps coming from the floor above. Jason had stopped dead to listen, barely breathing. "Oh," he said. "Then you're upstairs," he murmured to the mysterious intruder. It was as if there was some sort of challenge between them, a contest of wills. How could it be that no one else in his family had noticed it? How could it be that neither his father nor his mother nor his sister Julia had understood that there was someone else in this enormous house? Why was he the only one that ever heard these things? But he'd understood it instantly from the first moment he set his suitcases down in the courtyard. There was something super cool here, a mystery, a force. Argo Manor was far too large a house for Jason to know every inch of it. It was a house of rooms and secrets, a house with history, a house that had witnessed strange things. No one had to tell Jason. He knew it. No, he felt it as if it were a physical sensation, the way a person shivers in the cold or pulls a hand away from the fire. Somehow he knew it. He just knew it. And when they faced each other the first time, it was though Argo Manor had whispered to him, "Not everything is as it seems. Come discover my secrets, Jason."